There are certain individuals who enter this life with what seems to be an open door between the seen and the unseen. You may call them sensitive, empathic, intuitive. The poet calls them touched. The mystic calls them gifted. But I will speak of them as what they truly are, those who are born too close to the veil. For such individuals, the world is not only what is apparent, it is also what trembles behind appearances. And that, my dear friends, is both a burden and a calling. I have met many of these souls in my life. They walk softly. They listen more than they speak. They cry at things others laugh at. They often feel out of place, not because they are broken, but because they carry too much of the world inside them. The wind, a tone of voice, the flicker of an eye, all of these speak to them in ways that cannot be explained. They are not weak. They are receptive. But in a world that rewards armor and detachment, receptivity becomes dangerous. You see, the highly sensitive person is not simply attuned to emotion. They are porous to the unconscious. They feel not only what others feel, but what others repress. They pick up the discarded fragments of the collective psychology, sorrow, awe, terror, and absorb them like psychic sponges. This is why they are often exhausted. This is why they seek solitude. Not because they dislike people, but because they are constantly carrying them. But this sensitivity is not only interpersonal, it is archetypal. These individuals are born under the dominion of the great inner gods, what I have called the archetypes. They are often visited in dreams by animals, old women, children, fires, floods, deaths, and births. Their psyche is vivid, mythic, alchemical, and yet, because they have no language for this, they often think something is wrong with them. They are told they are too emotional, too soft, too intense. But I tell you, no, if you are one of these people, listen closely. There is nothing wrong with you, but you are in danger. Yes, I say this with the full weight of seriousness, because the sensitive soul, if not rooted in self, if not protected by knowledge, if not stabilized by inner work, can become lost in the very depth they were born to navigate. There is a hidden warning in my work. One I did not always speak directly, but left scattered like breadcrumbs through my writings. It is this: the more sensitive you are to the unconscious, the greater your risk of being devoured by it. The unconscious does not differentiate between your soul and the world's pain. It does not say, this suffering belongs to another. It says, here is what is repressed. Here is what needs to be seen. And the highly sensitive individual, if unaware, will mistake collective material for personal identity. They will believe the sadness they feel is their own, when it may be the grief of generation. They will believe the fear they sense is their own, when it may be the anxiety of an entire room. They will believe they are unwell, when in truth they are overwhelmed by the unspoken. And unless they learn the boundaries of the self, they risk merging with the chaos they were born to witness. I remember a young man who came to me trembling. He was 24 and had not slept well in years. He said he felt as though he were carrying the world on his back. When he walked into a church, he cried. When he stood beside a dying tree, he wept. He could not explain why. He was ashamed. I'm too sensitive, he said. I can't function. But in his dreams, symbols were abundant angels feeding him soil, wolves licking wounds that were not his, a city collapsing while he stood unharmed at its center. I told him, you are not sick, you are a vessel, but no one taught you how to hold. And so we began the work not of removing his sensitivity, but of making it conscious. That is the key. Sensitivity that is unconscious becomes suffering. But sensitivity that is made conscious becomes vision. If you are highly sensitive, you must begin by accepting that you are not here to fit into the world as it is. You are here to feel what others avoid, to hear what others silence, to see what others deny. But you cannot do this alone. And you cannot do this unconsciously, otherwise you will be consumed. There is a stage in every sensitive soul's journey where they become overwhelmed by the darkness they absorb. This may appear as depression, anxiety, somatic symptoms, or what we call a spiritual emergency. It is as if the soul has become waterlogged and the light can no longer shine through. This is not failure, this is initiation. If the unconscious has chosen you as its vessel, it will demand your transformation. The dream begins to intensify. The outer world begins to mirror the inner. You are pulled into strange encounters, synchronicities, losses, awakenings. Nothing feels stable. And this, I must warn you, is where many do not survive unchanged. Some numb themselves, some fragment, some cling to the persona and pretend everything is fine. But only a few surrender to the descent. They allow themselves to fall not into despair, but into depth. They begin the sacred work of individuation. And that is when the true path of the highly sensitive begins not as victim, but as mystic. Not as broken, but as initiated. Once you begin the descent, what the ancients called katabasis, you will find that your sensitivity, once dismissed as fragility, now reveals itself as a gateway, but only if you do not turn away. The sensitive soul must descend consciously into the underworld of their own psyche. This is not a metaphor. It is an experiential truth. The descent is not something you imagine, it is something you endure. In dreams, it often takes the shape of tunnels, basements, caves, endless staircases, drowning or being buried. Do not fear these symbols. They are not there to destroy you. They are initiations. They are invitations to face what has been buried, not only in you, but in the collective field of humanity. Because here is what I must emphasize. The highly sensitive person is not merely sensing their own wounds. They are tuning into the repressed soul of the culture. Their body becomes the mirror of the world's silence. And when that silence grows loud, it is the sensitive who trembles. They feel the weight of the unlived life, not only their own, but that of those around them. And so, unless the sensitive soul learns the structure of the self, unless they ground themselves in something deeper than emotion, they will float adrift between others' pain and their own confusion. That is why many sensitives become lost in roles. The healer, the listener, the empath, the peacemaker. These roles offer a momentary sense of identity, but they are masks. They cannot bear the full weight of the soul. Only the self can. The self is not the ego. It is not who you think you are. It is the whole of who you are, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, wounded and wise. And for the sensitive person, discovering the self is not a luxury, it is survival. I worked with a woman once who dreamed of being swallowed by the earth. In the dream, she fell through the ground during a dinner party, and no one noticed. She landed in a womb-like cavern where an ancient figure began to paint symbols on her skin. She wept upon waking. She didn't understand. But I told her, you are not being buried. You are being reborn. Your sensitivity has taken you as far as it can alone. Now the unconscious is initiating you into the deeper pattern. That figure painting her in the dark, that was the self reclaiming her from the persona. If you are highly sensitive, your work is not to escape the world, but to enter it through your own soul. This begins with boundaries, psychic boundaries, energetic sovereignty. Sensitivity without boundaries is absorption. But sensitivity with boundaries becomes intuition. Do you understand? You are not meant to carry others. You are meant to see them. You are not meant to rescue the world. You are meant to mirror its forgotten parts. This requires immense discipline and awe, of repression, but of discernment. What is mine and what is not? What am I feeling and what am I receiving? Where do I end and where does the other begin? The dream will help you here. It will begin to sharpen your symbols. If you are giving too much, you may dream of leaking vessels, flooding rooms, open wounds. If you are being invaded psychically, you may dream of strangers in your house, doors you forgot to lock, animals staring through glass. These are not random, they are messages from the soul. Do not ignore them. Write them, speak them, sit with them. Let the image work you. This is not superstition. This is the sacred language of your own unconscious. And over time, something begins to happen. The dreams shift. The symbols change. Where there were floods, there is now a river. Where there were wounds, there is now a scar. Where there were faceless figures, there are now guides, because the unconscious responds to relationship. It wants to be seen. And when the sensitive soul stops rejecting their gift, stops drowning in it, and begins to relate to it, the unconscious begins to collaborate. The world does not change, but you do. You begin to notice when your emotions are not yours. You begin to choose what you engage with, rather than absorbed by default. You begin to honor your body's signals, your dreams' metaphors, your intuition's wisdom. And slowly, very slowly, you begin to feel something rare, a center, not an idea of who you are, but a living presence within. That is the self. And from that place, your sensitivity becomes not a burden, but a gift of precision. You no longer react to everything. You respond to what is real. And this, I must tell you, changes everything. Because most of the world is blind to its inner life. But you were born to feel it. Not as a victim, as a mirror. A mirror that has first looked inward. Now that you have seen the necessity of dissent and the wisdom of setting boundaries not to shut the world out, but to let the self in, you must understand what comes next, the initiation. Because once the unconscious knows that you are listening, once it senses you are no longer running from your dreams, but entering them with reverence, it begins to change its language. It no longer chases you with symbols of collapse. It begins to court you with symbols of becoming. The highly sensitive person who makes it this far will begin to see the world as a mirror reverie relationship. Every encounter, every sensation will feel strangely charged, as if imbued with a hidden message. This is not imagination. This is the archetypal field awakening. You are beginning to recognize what I have long called the myth you are already living. You must not misunderstand me here. This is not metaphor. The soul lives in myth the way the body lives in air. We are never outside it, only unconscious of it. And the sensitive individual is born closer to the membrane between their personal narrative and the collective story. This is why they often feel like outsiders, not because they don't belong, but because they are born knowing something the world has forgotten, that every life is a symbolic journey. Once you see this, your sensitivity begins to anchor. You stop being overwhelmed by what you feel and start tracking it. You learn to ask not, why do I feel this? But what does this mean? What is being activated in me? Because feeling for the sensitive is not only emotional, it is oracular. It is the nervous system acting as antennae. And when aligned with the self, these signals no longer paralyze, they guide. But the path is not always tranquil. There is a deeper layer still. The sensitive soul must face what I call the archetype of the wounded seer. The one who sees too much, feels too much, and must carry what they know in a world that does not want to know. This is the true cross of the empath, not that they feel, but that they must bear witness. To bear witness is no small task. It is to hold what others bury, to name what others deny, to walk into rooms and feel the ghosts no one speaks of, to dream of what is to come and not always be believed. And yet, if the soul has called you to this, you must answer not with martyrdom, but with conscious participation. The dream will change again. You will begin to meet figures, guides, elders, ancestors, animals that walk beside you rather than chase you. The dark forest becomes navigable. The cave becomes a womb. The flood becomes a baptism. These are signs that the unconscious no longer sees you as passive. It sees you as initiated. You are no longer merely sensitive. You are a mystic in the making. But here lies the great paradox. The closer you come to the self, the more alone you may feel. Because most of the world is not ready to live this way. They are still asleep, projecting, numbing, pretending. You must not resent them. They are you, in another form, at an earlier time. Your task is not to convince, Your task is to embody, to live with such integrity, such presence, such inner clarity, that your very being becomes a kind of mirror, and in that mirror others may glimpse themselves more fully. This is the role of the conscious, sensitive person in the modern world. To re-enchant the world with meaning, not through dogma or doctrine, but through being. Your dream is your scripture. Your body, the temple. Your silence, the prayer. And your pain, the alchemical fire through which all your fragments are being forged into wholeness. Few survive this unchanged, yes. But those who do, they do not return as who they were. They return as who they are. And in doing so, they help the world remember its soul. And now, having descended into shadow and risen through symbol, we must speak of the final movement in the journey of the sensitive soul, returning to the world without losing the soul's depth. This, I have found, is the most delicate task of all. It is one thing to awaken, it is another to remain awake in a world that constantly invites you to fall back asleep, to reabsorb into persona, to retreat into roles, to explain away the sacred with language too shallow for mystery. And yet the soul does not forget its journey. Once you have walked the spiral path inward and lived the initiation that only the unconscious can orchestrate, you cannot go back to the person you were. That person was built to survive. But now you are called to live. Here is the final warning, and it is a quiet one, the kind only the initiated can hear. Your sensitivity is no longer about you. It is the tool through which the self meets the world. Not to dominate it, not to escape it, but to witness it. You are a carrier of symbol now, a bearer of images, a weaver of meaning. The old world will still ask you to explain, to justify, to be efficient, to be simple, but you are no longer any of these things. You are complex, because you have become a vessel for the whole human experience, not only the desirable, but the exiled, the ancient, the archetypal. The wound that once made you withdraw has become a threshold. The dreams that once terrified you have become instruction. The fire that once burned you hollow now illuminates your path. You may still tremble, but now you tremble with presence. This is how you serve, now not by doing more, or helping everyone, or being endlessly available. You serve by staying rooted in your own reality, in your own myth, in your own embodied knowing. Because a sensitive soul who has walked through their own darkness and emerged bearing light is dangerous to the world's illusions. They cannot be manipulated. They cannot be bought. They cannot be made small again. Their silence speaks. Their gaze reveals. Their life becomes symbolic not in metaphor but in truth. And the world begins to shift even slightly in their presence. This is not grandiosity. This is the mystery of the incarnated self. The self is not an idea. It is a field of awareness that has remembered its origin. It is you, but it is also more than you. It is the root from which your sensitivity draws not suffering, but strength. Not overwhelm, but clarity. Not sorrow, but vision. So if you are sensitive, and you have survived this journey, if you have descended and risen and walked with the unconscious long enough to feel its rhythm in your own breath, then know this: you are no longer fragile. You are feral. You are no longer reactive. You are responsive. You are no longer broken. You are whole. And in your wholeness, there is space for the world. Not to be carried, but to be held in witness. That is enough. And that is everything. So go now, not back into performance, but forward into presence. Let your dreams continue to speak. Let your body continue to guide. Let your silence carry weight. And let your soul, that ancient and luminous vessel of truth, shine quietly on behalf of all those who still believe they are too much. You are not too much. You are what the world forgot it needed. You are the mirror. You are the myth. You are the medicine. And now you are free.